Hi everyone, my name is Itay Sharfi and I'm an adjunct professor at Cal State Fullerton. This is my second video about resume crafting. I started creating those videos for the benefit of my students that were interested in how to create better resume. This time I would like to discuss 6 different ways of how to leverage advanced tools like large language models, in short LLM. Example of those models are ChatGPT or Bard, and we'll talk about how you can make the most of them. And correct using of those tools is really important in today's hyper-competitive job market. Leveraging them can make the difference between having your resume accepted for an interview or not. So let's talk about that. The first way to leverage LLMs, probably the most trivial one, is grammar and style. Those LLM, they have language in them. They're very, very good at language. Some of us are not native English speakers. And even those that they are, you might make a couple of mistakes. In today's world, there is no excuses for grammar mistake or style in written documents. Please do leverage those tools and ask them, hey, can you fix any grammar or style issue, or at least point them out? The second tip is about rewriting the resume to be specific, to be targeted, to be role relevance. One of the easiest ways to do it is you can copy the job description together with the preferred and required qualifications and put your resume next to it and say, hey, does it answer the job description? Are there things that are missing? Help me rewrite to make it more suitable for the job description. There are areas where the job description, for example, might be interested in some interpersonal skill. You might have forgotten to write them. Might be worth to highlight them in order to make sure that it's suitable. The third is to follow best practices template. A lot of the resumes today are either written by machines or very tired people. So it's really important to have a standard template, having best practices, and make sure that your resume will fit with that. That's not as difficult as it sounds, because you can say, hey, here's a template, here's my resume, make my resume rewritten to fit the template. Pretty simple, right? The fourth point, which is a bit more advanced, is something I call bullet point restructuring. So in your resume, you usually have bullet points under your employment or your project where you discuss what you did. Sometimes I read resumes and it's quite difficult to understand what the person has done. So the first thing is there is something that's called a STAR method, situation, target, action, result. This makes it easy to understand what you did. You describe the situation, say what you worked on, what you tried to do, what you've done, and what was the result. When using STAR method, you can use LLMs to automatically do that analysis. Or ask them in a different way. Hey, is it clear what I've done here? The second is the use of action verbs. Again, LLMs are very good with language. It's important to make sure that the verbs that you use don't say I was responsible or I manage, but actually what you did, the fact that you took action. This is important because not only it shows what you've done, also your personality shines through. You look like an active person who does things instead of somebody passive. So it's also highly recommended, and you can use LLMs, again, like ChatGPT or Bard for that. The third thing is to talk about in objective language. Let the results speak for themselves. Don't say things like, I worked on the most complicated systems. I'm very good at complicated systems. Let the complexity of the system speak for itself. For example, it might have been a distributed system with hardware components to it. So you can also use LLM to make sure that what you're describing in your resume is written in an objective way. The fifth way to leverage LLMs is to ask it, hey, what can I do to enhance my resume for this given position? For example, maybe some information is missing for you. You might take some Coursera or read about it or just even know that this is missing. So for example, you can mention it in the cover letter or try and highlight it in different ways. At least you're aware of that when you're writing your resume. The sixth which is actually quite interesting, is what's not relevant. When people write resumes, in many cases, it's kind of like a pile of everything that we did. But what's actually relevant for this role? It's really important to actually write less than writing more in many scenarios, making you look more of a master than a jack of all trades. So you can ask the LLMs, hey, tell me which sections, tell me which bullets may not contribute. You could potentially identify areas. For example, you might apply for a job that has a backend. However, maybe some of the technologies that you use are front-end. So this might not contribute to applying to that position. So it's good to put things that are relevant. And again, you can ask LLM for relevancy. One thing that's important when using AI is to understand that sometimes it will rewrite things to not necessarily reflect correctly your experience. So you want to be on the lookout for that to make sure that your resume truly reflects the things that you actually have done. Another thing is that when you're using AI, again, it might behave in unpredictable ways. It's quite good to have versioning of your resume and make sure that the changes that were made were actually beneficial. If you find this guide beneficial, please consider subscribing. I look forward to reading your feedback and questions in the comment section. Thank you very much.